Commander stood at the observation deck of Harmony Station and watched the stars. He had been stationed here for 3 years now, overseeing the small human presence on this neutral outpost. The station was huge, a spinning wheel of metal and glass that housed over 50,000 beings from dozens of different species. It was a place of trade, diplomacy, and peaceful cooperation, or at least it was supposed to be. Lieutenant walked up beside him, his footsteps echoing in the quiet corridor. "Sir, the ships are still holding position around the station. They haven't moved in 6 hours." Nodded slowly. He had been watching those ships since they arrived yesterday. 12 massive warships, their dark hulls bristling with weapons. They formed a perfect circle around Harmony Station, close enough to be threatening but far enough to avoid immediate confrontation. Any communication from them? Nothing official, but Ambassador says the talks broke down completely. They are demanding we hand over the asteroid belt in Sector 7, all of it. Felt his jaw tight. Sector 7 was human territory, won through careful negotiation and legal claims when humanity first joined the galactic community 200 years ago. The asteroids there were rich in rare minerals, resources that powered human ships and stations throughout their 12 systems. And if we refuse? His expression was grim. They didn't say, but those ships say enough. Down in the station's diplomatic quarter, Doctor was packing her research materials with shaking hands. Her assistant Minu helped her, carefully wrapping the data crystals that contained years of work studying how different species work together. "Do you think they'll really do something?" Minu asked. He was young, barely 25, and this was his first assignment off Earth. Didn't answer right away. She had been studying the galaxy's species for a decade. She knew them well. They were an old empire, proud and militaristic. They had expanded their territory for centuries, always through force or the threat of it. They saw negotiation as weakness and compromise as surrender. "I think," she said carefully, "that we should be ready for anything." The station's central plaza was usually busy with traders and tourists, but today it felt different. Beings from all species moved quickly, their eyes darting to the display screens that showed the ships outside. Some were trying to book passage on departing vessels. Others were sending messages home, just in case. In the diplomatic wing, Ambassador sat across from the representative, a massive creature named Overlord Ketch. His species stood nearly 3 meters tall, their bodies covered in thick armor-like skin. Ketch's 4 eyes stared at her with barely concealed contempt. "Your answer is still no." His voice rumbled like distant thunder. Kept her face calm, though her heart was racing. She had been a diplomat for 20 years, had faced difficult negotiations before, but never anything like this. "The asteroid belt is sovereign human territory, recognized by the Accord Council. We cannot simply hand it over because you demand it." Ketch leaned forward, his massive hands gripping the edge of the table. "Cannot or will not." "Both." His voice was steady. "The resources in that belt support 3 human colonies. Millions of people depend on them. We offered to share extraction rights to establish joint mining operations. That offer still stands." "We do not share." Ketch stood, his shadow falling across the table. "We take what we need. Your species is young, weak. You have been in the galaxy for barely 2 centuries. You should learn your place." Stood as well, though she had to look up to meet his eyes. "Our place is wherever we choose to stand. The law supports our claim." Ketch's laugh was like rocks grinding together. "Law? You speak of law while we speak of reality. The reality is that my ships surround this station. The reality is that 1,500 of your people are here, along with thousands of other beings. The reality is that you have 72 hours to agree to our terms." "Or what?" His voice was cold now. "Or we will teach the galaxy what happens to those who defy the Empire." Ketch turned and walked out, his footsteps shaking the floor. Stood alone in the room for a moment, her hands gripping the table. Then she activated her communication device. "This is Ambassador. Priority message to Earth. We have a situation." The message took 4 hours to reach Earth, traveling through the network of relay stations that connected the galaxy. It arrived at Earth's High Council chamber just as dawn was breaking over the Atlantic Ocean. Chancellor read it twice, then called an emergency session. The High Council gathered within an hour, 12 members, each representing a different region of Earth and humanity's colonies. They sat in a circular room deep beneath the ocean, in a facility that had existed since humanity first achieved faster-than-light travel. On the screens around them, data flowed constantly. Ship positions, resource reports, population centers, everything they needed to make impossible decisions. They have made their move, Chancellor said, her voice echoing in the chamber. They hold Harmony Station hostage. 50,000 beings, 1,500 of them human. They demand we surrender the Sector 7 asteroid belt and submit to what they call protective oversight of our outer colonies. They've given us 72 hours. Counselor from the Mars colonies spoke first. We cannot surrender sovereign territory. If we do, every other empire will see us as weak. The demands will never stop. But we also cannot risk 50,000 lives, Counselor from Europa added. The Accord Council will negotiate. They always do. Chancellor shook her head. The Accord Council will talk for months while those people remain hostages, and even if they reach a solution, it will involve concessions from us. They know this. That's why they chose this method. Then what do you propose? Counselor asked. Looked around the room, meeting each member's eyes. I propose we send a message that humanity will never negotiate with those who threaten our people. I propose we remind the galaxy why we studied their military history so carefully. I propose we show them what humans do when someone goes too far. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what she meant. Everyone knew what she was suggesting. It had been 3,000 years since any species had formally declared total war in the galaxy. War was supposed to be civilized now, limited, controlled. Species didn't fight to destroy each other anymore. But they had made a mistake. They thought humans were like the other young species, cautious and afraid. They didn't understand human history. They didn't know what humanity had done to itself before reaching the stars. They didn't realize that humans had spent 2 centuries in the galaxy preparing for a war they hoped would never come. All in favor? Chancellor asked. 12 hands rose, not one hesitated. Back on Harmony Station, Commander received a message from Earth. It was short, just 3 words. Message incoming, stand ready. He showed it to Lieutenant. What does that mean? Looked at the message for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant smile. It means Earth just made a decision, and I don't think they are going to like it. Outside the station, the ships continued their patrol, confident and unconcerned. Overlord Ketch sat in his command chair, already planning how he would divide the human asteroid belt among his officers. It would be a good reward for their loyalty. He didn't know that in 72 hours, his empire would be at war. He didn't know that humanity was about to reveal what they really were. He didn't know that he had just made the worst mistake in history. The galaxy was about to change, and it would never be the same again. The message went out from Earth on every frequency, in every language, to every corner of the galaxy. It took 6 hours for the transmission to reach the farthest human colonies, and another 2 for it to spread through the galactic communication network. By the time 12 hours had passed, every spacefaring civilization had received it. Chancellor's face appeared on screens across thousands of worlds. She wore a simple black suit, no decorations or symbols of rank. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were cold. Behind her stood the symbols of Earth, a blue and green planet that most species had never bothered to visit. This is Chancellor of the United Human Government, speaking to all civilizations of the galaxy. On Harmony Station, beings stopped what they were doing and watched. In the flagship, Overlord Ketch looked up from his meal with mild interest. In the halls of the Accord Council, ancient beings leaned forward in their seats. The Empire has taken 50,000 innocent beings hostage, continued. They demand we surrender sovereign human territory and submit to their authority. They have given us 72 hours to comply. She paused, and something in her pause made the galaxy hold its breath. We have considered their demands. Here is our response. As of this moment, humanity declares a state of total war with the Empire. This declaration is immediate and absolute. They have 72 hours to release every hostage unharmed and withdraw all forces from human space. If they do not, humanity will prosecute this war until the Empire ceases to exist as a military power. There will be no negotiation. There will be no compromise. There will be no mercy for those who threaten the innocent. The message ended. The galaxy erupted into chaos. The Accord Council called an emergency session within minutes. The council chamber was ancient, built by civilizations that had reached the stars when humans were still living in caves. Counselor represented humanity, a quiet woman who had served in the diplomatic corps for 30 years. She sat calmly while the chamber exploded with voices. "This is insanity," shouted the representative, a being made mostly of crystalline structures that glowed when agitated. "Total war. Does humanity understand what they're saying?" The counselor, whose species had been peacefully exploring space for 5,000 years, spoke in a calmer tone. "Perhaps this is simply a negotiating tactic, a strong opening position to bring to the table." Stood and the chamber quieted. She was small compared to most of the beings there, but her voice carried clearly. "This is not a negotiating tactic. This is not a bluff. Humanity means every word. We have given the clear terms. Release the hostages, withdraw from our space, or face total war." "But you cannot win," the representative said, genuinely confused. "The Empire spans 40 systems, their military numbers in the millions. Your defense force is, forgive me, adequate at best. You control only 12 systems. The mathematics of this conflict are not in your favor." Smiled, and several counselors felt suddenly uncomfortable. "With respect, counselor, you are working with outdated information. Perhaps humanity has been more careful in what we reveal than you realized." The ancient head of the council, a being whose species name was unpronounceable to humans, raised one of its many appendages. "Counselor, the council requests that humanity reconsider. We can mediate this situation. Economic sanctions against the limited military pressure, a graduated response that encourages them to back down without catastrophic war." "The time for mediation ended when they took hostages," replied. "The time for graduated responses ended when they threatened our people. The time for careful diplomacy ended when they assumed humanity would submit to threats. They have 72 hours. After that, they will learn what humans really are." On the flagship orbiting Harmony Station, Overlord Ketch watched the human transmission for the third time. Then he started laughing. His officers joined in, the sound echoing through the command deck. "Total war," he wheezed between laughs. "They declare total war. These merchants and engineers who have been in space for barely 2 centuries. His second-in-command, a veteran named, grinned. "Should we be concerned, Overlord?" "Concerned?" Ketch wiped tears from his eyes. "Of what? We have 12 ships here alone. Our empire can field thousands. Our soldiers are bred for war, enhanced for combat, trained from birth. What can these soft humans do? Talk us to death." But not everyone in the Empire was laughing. In the war room of their capital world, military commanders studied the data their intelligence had gathered on humanity. It wasn't much. Humans kept their military capabilities surprisingly private. They participated in joint exercises with other species, but always seemed to hold back, never showing their full strength. Their fleet numbers were documented, but had the uncomfortable feeling that those numbers weren't complete. "What do we actually know about human warfare?" he asked his staff. The intelligence officer, a younger named, pulled up files. "They study military history obsessively. Their networks are filled with analysis of historical battles from dozens of species. They request every military manual, every tactical document that other civilizations are willing to share. Some of our analysts think it's an academic interest, a species trying to understand the galaxy they joined. And what do you think? Hesitated. I think a species doesn't study warfare that carefully unless they're planning to use it. Meanwhile, across human space, something was happening that most of the galaxy didn't see. Civilian transports were being recalled to home ports. Mining stations were locking down and activating systems that had been installed years ago but never used. Defense platforms around human colonies were powering up weapons that didn't appear in any registry. And in the dark spaces between stars, ships were moving. Captain sat in the command chair of this Wrath, a striker-class warship that officially didn't exist. His ship was one of 40 like it, built in secret over decades, maintained by crews who lived most of their lives in deep space. They were painted in materials that absorbed sensor waves, powered by engines that ran quieter than anything the galaxy thought possible. "Orders are in," Specialist reported from the weapons station. She was young but had been training for this her entire adult life. "We're part of Strike Group 7. Target, Harmony Station. Objective, hostage rescue and elimination of fleet presence." Engineer looked up from his console. "Are we really doing this, actually going to war?" Looked at his crew, these men and women who had volunteered for a mission that might never happen. "They threatened our people, took them hostage. They think we're weak because we prefer trade to conflict. They're about to learn why we studied warfare so carefully. Check all systems. We go in 71 hours." Back on Harmony Station, Commander was quietly preparing. He had received coded messages from Earth, instructions that made his stomach tight but his mind clear. Lieutenant was gathering the security team, 30 humans who had seemed like ordinary station guards but were actually special forces operators with years of combat training. Doctor found Commander in his office. "Is it true, the declaration?" He nodded. "It's true. But we can't win. The math doesn't work, they are too strong." Looked at her carefully. "Doctor, how much do you know about human military history? Real history, not the sanitized versions we share with other species." "I'm not a military historian." "Then let me tell you something. Humans have been at war with each other for thousands of years. We've fought with sticks and stones, with swords and guns, with nuclear weapons and biological horrors. We nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times, and every time we learned. We studied. We got better at it." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the ships. "The last 200 years we've been at peace with the galaxy, but we never stopped preparing. We never stopped learning. We never stopped building, because we knew someday someone would mistake our preference for peace as an inability to fight. So we can win. Doctor, when this is over, the galaxy is going to understand something about humanity. We don't fight wars to win. We fight wars to end them permanently." The 72 hours counted down. The galaxy watched and worried. The Accord Council held endless sessions, debating intervention strategies and peaceful solutions. The Empire mobilized more fleets, confident in their strength, and humanity waited, quiet and ready. In the final hour, Ambassador sent one last message to Overlord Ketch. "You have 1 hour to release the hostages and withdraw. This is your final chance." Ketch didn't bother to respond. When the deadline expired, the war began, and the galaxy would never be the same. The sensors showed nothing. Their ships maintained their formation around Harmony Station, weapons powered and ready, but the displays were clear. No human vessels within detection range. The nearest human military base was 4 light towers away, far too distant to respond quickly. Overlord Ketch relaxed in his command chair, satisfied. The humans had made empty threats. Now reality would teach them their place. "Overlord," his sensor officer called out. "I'm detecting spatial distortions, multiple points around the perimeter." Ketch frowned. "Distortions, what kind?" "I don't know, sir. The readings are strange. almost like ships are preparing to jump out of faster-than-light travel, but that's impossible. We're too close to the station. The gravitational interference would tear any ship apart if they tried to emerge here. Then it's sensor ghosts, ignore them. But the distortions grew stronger. And then, in the space between heartbeats, 30 human ships appeared inside the perimeter. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their positions calculated to within meters. It was a maneuver that every species considered impossible, a violation of basic physics that required computational power and precision that shouldn't exist. Captain's ship, this Wrath, emerged directly above the flagship. "Fire," he ordered, his voice calm. Specialist's fingers danced across her controls. The weapons that fired were not the standard plasma cannons or laser arrays that most species used. They were based on principles that the Accord Council had banned 50 years ago as excessively destructive. Magnetic accelerators that fired projectiles at a fraction of light speed. Particle beams that ignored traditional shielding. Missiles that didn't just explode, but released electromagnetic pulses that disabled every electronic system within range. The flagship's shields lasted 3 seconds. The hull lasted 2 more. Overlord Ketch had time to realize what was happening before his ship broke apart around him. He died still not understanding how he had lost. Around Harmony Station, the battle became a massacre. The ships were powerful, their weapons devastating, their armor thick. But they had been built to fight traditional battles, fleet against fleet at safe distances. They weren't ready for human ships that appeared inside their formation, that moved with impossible precision, that fired weapons that simply ignored conventional defenses. Engineer watched his displays as the human ships performed maneuvers that should have been impossible. The computer is compensating for gravitational stress in real time. We must have run 1,000,000 simulations to make this work. "Try 1,000,000," Captain replied. "We've been practicing this for 30 years. Every scenario, every possible mistake, every contingency. The thought we were merchants. They didn't realize we were preparing." Within 6 minutes, half the fleet was disabled or destroyed. The remaining ships tried to retreat, but human vessels blocked every escape route. They didn't fire to kill, not anymore. They fired to disable, to cripple, to leave the ships floating helpless in space. "Cease fire," ordered. "Signal the survivors. They have one chance to surrender." On the remaining ships, commanders stared at their screens in shock. Their fleet had been destroyed in minutes. The humans had weapons and tactics they had never seen before, had never imagined. When the surrender demand came, they accepted immediately. But the battle for the ships was only part of the operation. Inside Harmony Station, Lieutenant and his team moved through the corridors like shadows. They wore armor that seemed to drink in light, that masked their heat signatures and muffled their sounds. They moved with precision that came from years of training in environments just like this. The soldiers guarding the hostages never saw them coming. His team used weapons that stunned rather than killed, that dropped the guards in seconds without raising alarms. They moved through the station level by level, releasing hostages and securing areas with efficiency that seemed almost mechanical. Doctor was in her quarters with Minu when the door opened. She looked up, afraid it was soldiers coming to move them. Instead, she saw a figure in black armor, a human face behind a transparent visor. "Doctor, I'm Lieutenant. We're here to get you out." "How?" she whispered. "The ships are no longer a concern. Please gather your things quickly. We're evacuating all human personnel within the hour." Outside, the battle was already over. Human rescue ships were docking with Harmony Station, collecting hostages and preparing for evacuation. The survivors sat in their disabled ships, watching in confusion and fear as human vessels ignored them, focused entirely on the rescue operation. But this was just the beginning. While the galaxy's attention was on Harmony Station, human forces were moving throughout space. Strike groups like appeared at military installations, supply depots, communication relays. They didn't engage in long battles or siege warfare. They struck fast and hard, disabled their targets, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Strategists coordinated the offensive from Earth's War Command, a facility buried 3 kilometers under the Pacific Ocean. Around her, displays showed every human ship, every target, every objective. She had been planning this operation for 5 years, ever since intelligence suggested the might become aggressive. Now her plans became reality. Strike Group 3 reports successful attack on the shipyard at Prime, an operator reported. Yard disabled, construction halted, 0 civilian casualties. Strike Group 12 has neutralized the sensor array in Sector 9. Fleet movements in that region are now blind. Strike Group 5 engaged patrol fleet in the system. Enemy fleet disabled in 8 minutes. Our forces are extracting now. Watched the reports flow in and felt a mixture of pride and sadness. Pride in how well her people performed, how perfectly the plans worked. Sadness that it had come to this, that all their preparation for peace had to be set aside for war. Send the next wave, she ordered. Targets are fuel depots and ammunition storage. Disable but don't destroy. We want them crippled, not dead. This was the part that confused the galaxy. Human forces fought with devastating efficiency against military targets, but they were careful. They disabled ships rather than destroying them when possible. They targeted infrastructure but avoided civilian areas. When a colony was in danger from a space battle nearby, human ships actually stopped fighting to evacuate the civilians first. The military commander watched the reports with growing horror. His empire's fleets were being systematically destroyed, not in great battles where honor could be found, but in quick strikes that left his ships floating uselessly in space. Supply lines were cut. Communication networks were down. Entire sectors were going dark. How are they doing this? He demanded. Where are these ships coming from? Our intelligence said humans only had a defense fleet, maybe 200 vessels total. Pulled up new data. Sir, we're now tracking over 500 human warships, and that's just what we can see. Some of these vessels have signatures we've never encountered before. They're using stealth technology that shouldn't exist. 500. Where were they hiding 500 warships? In deep space, sir. In the dark between stars where no one patrols. They've been building this fleet in secret for decades. Felt a chill run through him. What else don't we know about humans? The answer came over the next days and weeks. Human forces revealed weapons that made military scientists scramble to understand. Kinetic missiles that accelerated to relativistic speeds, hitting with the force of nuclear weapons but leaving no radiation. Electromagnetic pulse warheads that disabled everything electronic within a light second. Hunter-killer drones that learned from each engagement, adapting their tactics in real time. But the most terrifying weapon wasn't technology. It was human strategy. They didn't fight for territory or glory. They fought to destroy this ability to wage war. Every military asset was a target, every ship, every station, every orbital platform. But civilian infrastructure, untouched. Population centers, protected. The humans even warned civilians when battles would occur nearby, giving them time to evacuate. Captain's ship intercepted a transport fleeing a battle zone. His sensors showed it was filled with civilian refugees. Let them pass, he ordered. Give them an escort to the nearest safe port. Sir, they're protested. They're civilians. Our fight is with their military, not their people. Make sure they reach safety. The transport captain, a civilian merchant named, couldn't believe it when human warships appeared around his vessel. He expected death. Instead, they escorted him to a neutral station and left without a word. Later, he would tell others what happened, and the story would spread through space. The humans fought like demons against soldiers but protected the innocent like angels. This confused the people. Their own military had always told them that humans were weak, soft, unwilling to fight. But these humans fought with skill and fury that the Empire had never faced. Yet they also showed mercy that military doctrine considered weakness. After 3 weeks of war, the Empire's military was shattered. They had lost thousands of ships, hundreds of stations, and control of nearly half their territory. But their civilian population was largely intact, protected by human forces even as they destroyed military targets around them. In the capital, Overlord Ketch's replacement, War Mistress, looked at the reports and made a decision. She had been a tactical officer before this war, had studied battles and strategies. She understood what was happening. The humans weren't trying to conquer. They were making it impossible for them to ever threaten them again. "Send a message to Earth," she ordered. "We wish to discuss terms." The galaxy watched in shock as the mighty Empire asked for peace after only 3 weeks of war. But the shock turned to confusion when they heard humanity's response. The war was not over. Not yet. Not until humanity's terms were met completely. The Accord Council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from dozens of species shouted over each other, their translators working overtime to convert the arguments into something coherent. At the center of it all sat Counselor, calm and quiet while the storm raged around her. "Humanity has gone too far," the representative declared, his crystalline body glowing bright red with anger. "They use weapons that were banned. They fight a war that violates every convention we have established." The counselor nodded slowly. "They have asked for peace. Humanity should accept and begin negotiations. Continuing this war serves no purpose." Stood and the chamber gradually quieted. "They asked for negotiations," she corrected. "They did not offer surrender. They did not agree to our terms. They simply want to talk while they rebuild their military and plan their next move." "Your terms are unreasonable," shouted the representative. "You demand the complete dismantling of the military. You demand they release all client species. You demand permanent restrictions on their sovereignty. These terms are for total conquest, not peace." "No," replied, her voice hard. "These terms are to ensure they never threaten innocent beings again. They took hostages. They threatened civilians. They assumed we would submit to threats. We will accept peace, but only a peace that guarantees this never happens again." The ancient head of the council raised an appendage for silence. "Counselor, the council asks humanity to show mercy. They have learned their lesson. Further warfare is unnecessary." Looked at the ancient being with something close to pity. "With respect, Counselor, this is exactly why they felt confident threatening us. The galaxy talks of peace but accepts threats against the innocent. You negotiate with hostage takers. You compromise with bullies. You maintain order through careful diplomacy while species like the grow fat on conquest." "Then what would you have us do?" the counselor asked. "Learn," said simply. "Learn that some actions must have consequences so absolute that no one else will consider them. The threatened innocents. They must be made an example, not through cruelty, but through the complete removal of their ability to do this again." The representative stood. "And if other species object, the Confederacy has already sent a fleet to aid the. We will not stand by and watch humanity destroy an ancient empire." His expression didn't change, but something in her eyes made several counselors uncomfortable. "The fleet was intercepted at the border 3 hours ago. Your ships are now disabled and drifting. Your crews are unharmed, but your vessels will not be fighting anyone." The representative's glow flickered in shock. "You attacked ships. This is an act of war." "No," Captain's voice came over the chamber's speakers. "This is a warning. My name is Captain of the human warships Wrath. I was the one who intercepted the fleet. We disabled your ships in 17 minutes. We could have destroyed them in 5. Your crews are safe, your vessels can be repaired, but if you attempt to interfere with our operations again, we will treat you as combatants." The chamber fell silent. The message was clear. Humanity would fight the war alone, but they would tolerate no interference. Any species that aided the would face the same fate. "This is tyranny," the representative whispered. "No," corrected. "This is justice, and it's a lesson the galaxy seems to have forgotten." Throughout space, the war continued, but something strange was happening alongside the fighting. Human vessels destroyed military installations, yes, but they also delivered food to colonies cut off from supply lines. They disabled warships but then evacuated the crews and provided them with life support. They bombed ammunition depots but warned civilians hours in advance so they could evacuate safely. Doctor found herself leading these humanitarian efforts. After being rescued from Harmony Station, she had volunteered to coordinate relief operations. Now she worked with species from across the galaxy, organizing food shipments, medical supplies, and refugee transport for civilians caught in the war zone. "Why are we helping them?" Minyu asked as they loaded medical supplies onto a transport. "They're the enemy." Looked at her young assistant. "The military is our enemy. The people are just people caught in the middle. We're not fighting to punish innocents. We're fighting to stop those who threaten innocence." This distinction confused many species. The galaxy had seen wars before, but they were usually about territory or resources. Winners claimed planets and enslaved populations, but humans fought differently. They destroyed military power while protecting civilians. They claimed no territory. They demanded no tribute. They simply fought to remove the threat and nothing more. Admiral commanded the human fleet from her flagship, the Indomitable Spirit. She was a veteran of humanity's defense forces, had served for 40 years, and had spent those decades preparing for a war she prayed would never come. Now, at age 62, she found herself orchestrating the largest military operation in human history. "Status report," she ordered. Her tactical officer, a young man named Wu, pulled up displays. 70% of military infrastructure is disabled or destroyed. Their fleet is down to less than 30% strength. Their supply networks are in collapse. Strategist estimates another 2 weeks before their ability to wage war is effectively zero. Civilian casualties. Minimal, Admiral. Our forces are following engagement protocols. Civilian deaths number less than 500 across the entire war. Most of those were accidents or from military actions, not ours. Nodded. Those 500 deaths still weighed on her. Each one was a failure of precision, a moment where their careful planning hadn't been careful enough. But compared to historical wars, where civilian deaths often numbered in the millions, it was a miracle of restraint. "And the message?" she asked. "Broadcasting continuously to all territories. Doctor's face is becoming well known in their space." On worlds, civilians watched human broadcasts with confusion and growing hope. Doctor appeared on their screens, speaking in their language through translation devices. "The war is not with you," she said. "The war is with those who threatened innocent lives. We will continue to ensure you have food, medicine, and safety. We will protect you from the fighting. All we ask is that you stay clear of military zones when we warn you." Civilians began to ask questions their military didn't want to answer. If the humans were such terrible enemies, why were they protecting children? If this was a war of conquest, why weren't humans claiming territory? If humans were weak and soft, how had they destroyed the mighty military in weeks? War Mistress faced a population demanding answers. She had replaced Overlord Ketch after his death at Harmony Station, had taken command of a military in collapse. Now she stood before the High Council and told them the truth. "We lost," she said simply. "We underestimated humanity in every possible way. Their military is larger and more advanced than our intelligence suggested. Their tactics are sophisticated beyond anything we've encountered. Their weapons are based on principles we don't fully understand, and their strategy is focused entirely on destroying our ability to wage war while keeping our people alive." "Then surrender," one of the counselors said. "Accept their terms." "Their terms are harsh," another protested. They demand we reduce our military to defense forces only. They demand we release all 17 client species we control. They demand permanent monitoring of our weapons programs. This is humiliation. Looked at the council members. Yes, it is humiliation. It is also survival. The humans will not stop until their terms are met. I have studied their history, their wars. When they fight to complete victory. We can accept their terms now, or we can fight until we have nothing left but ruins and memories. The council argued for hours, but in the end they knew the truth. The Empire had made a terrible mistake, and now they would pay for it. Meanwhile, Captain's ship patrolled the border of space. His crew was tired. They had been fighting for weeks, constant battles and constant vigilance. But their mission wasn't over. Captain, Specialist called out. We're detecting a large fleet gathering at there. Looks like everything they have left. Are they preparing for a last stand? Unknown, sir, but they're not in an attack formation. They're just sitting there. Engineer brought up communications data. Sir, we're receiving a message. It's from War Mistress. She says she wants to meet with Admiral to discuss formal surrender terms. Looked at his crew. They were good people who had fought well. They deserved to go home. Signal the Admiral. Tell her they are ready to talk. Really talk this time. The message reached Admiral, who smiled for the first time in weeks. It's about time. Prepare my shuttle. We're going to end this war. The galaxy watched as human and representatives prepared to meet. Everyone expected humanity to demand harsh terms, to claim territory and resources as the price of peace. What they got instead would change the galaxy forever. The peace conference took place on a neutral station at the edge of space. The Accord Council insisted on hosting it, wanting some control over the proceedings. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to witness what they expected would be humanity's moment of triumph and conquest. Chancellor arrived with a small delegation. She wore the same simple black suit she had worn when declaring war 6 months ago. Beside her stood counselor, admiral, and strategist. No weapons, no guards, no show of force. Just 4 women who had guided humanity through its first war in 200 years. War Mistress represented the Empire. She came with military advisors and government officials, all looking tired and defeated. They had lost over 80% of their military capability. Their empire was in ruins. Their pride was shattered. They expected harsh terms, perhaps enslavement or complete conquest. The Accord Council's ancient head opened the proceedings. We gather to establish terms of peace between humanity and the Empire. Let the victors state their demands. Chancellor stood and activated a display showing human terms. The chamber went silent as beings read them. Then confusion rippled through the crowd. Humanity demands no territory, said clearly. We claim no worlds, no resources, no tribute. The Empire will maintain control of all its current territories and population. Looked up in shock. No territory, but you won by right of conquest. We didn't fight for conquest, interrupted. We fought because you threatened innocent lives. Now we want to ensure it never happens again. Our terms are simple. First, the military will be reduced to defensive forces only. You may protect your territory, but you will never again have the capability to threaten others. Second, all 17 species currently under control as client states will be released. They will choose their own governments and determine their own futures. They will have no authority over them. Third, they will accept monitoring of their weapons programs by a neutral council to ensure compliance with these terms. This monitoring will last 50 years. These are our only demands. There will be no reparations beyond what is needed to rebuild Harmony Station. There will be no war crimes trials. There will be no occupation. Accept these terms and this war ends today. The chamber erupted. Species shouted questions and objections. The representative stood. These terms are too lenient. They started this war. They should pay for their crimes. turned to face him. They are paying. They're paying with their pride and their power, but we're not monsters. We don't believe in punishing entire civilizations for the choices of their leaders. The people have suffered enough. The counselor spoke up. But without harsh penalties, what prevents them from simply rebuilding and attacking again? Us, Admiral said, standing beside. Let me be very clear to everyone in this chamber. Humanity fought this war to make a point. That point is now made. Any species that threatens innocence, that takes hostages, that assumes weakness where there is only patience, will face the same fate as the military. We will not tolerate threats against the innocent. Ever. Strategist added, and we will be watching. Not just but everyone. We are now part of the galactic power structure whether others like it or not. We have earned that place through force of arms. We intend to use that place to ensure no one else makes the mistakes they made. Counselor addressed the Accord Council directly. The galaxy has operated on a system of careful diplomacy and acceptable aggression. Species like the were tolerated because stopping them would be inconvenient. Smaller species suffered because protecting them wasn't worth the effort. That ends now. Humanity will be the inconvenience. We will be the effort. And any empire that thinks conquest and threats are acceptable will discover what we're capable of. War Mistress looked at the terms again. They were humiliating in their own way, reducing the mighty empire to a shadow of its former power. But they were also merciful in ways she hadn't expected. Her people would live. Their worlds would remain theirs. They would have a future, even if it was smaller than their past. I accept these terms on behalf of the Empire, she said quietly. And I apologize for the suffering we caused. We were arrogant. We believed our power made us right. We were wrong. Nodded, then this war is over. Let us begin the work of peace. The months that followed changed the galaxy in ways no one had anticipated. The 17 species released from control celebrated their freedom. Some formed their own governments. Others joined confederations. 2 of them applied to join human space, not as colonies but as equal partners. The Accord Council restructured itself. Humanity took a permanent seat as a major power, but they also insisted on changes to how the Council operated. No longer would threats against smaller species be tolerated. No longer would powerful empires be allowed to expand through intimidation. The Council gained enforcement powers it had never had before, and humanity made it clear they would provide the force necessary to back those powers. Captain and his crew returned to Earth as heroes, but the celebrations felt strange to them. They had fought well, had done their duty, but they had still killed. Found himself at the memorial for the 12,000 humans who had died in the war, 12,000 volunteers who had known the risks and served anyway. Specialist stood beside him. Was it worth it, Captain, all those deaths? Thought about Harmony Station, about the hostages who had been rescued, about the 17 species who were now free. I don't know if any war is worth it, but if we had to fight, I'm glad we fought this way. Quick, decisive, protecting innocents even when they were our enemies. Engineer had retired after the war. He now taught at the Naval Academy, training the next generation. His students asked him what the war was really like. Terrifying, he told them honestly, but also necessary. We trained for decades hoping we'd never fight. When we had to, we did it right. We ended it fast. We protected the innocent. And we made sure the galaxy understood that humanity stands for something. Lieutenant returned to station security work, but he found civilian life strange after months of combat. Doctor offered him a job with the relief organization she now directed. We need people who understand both military operations and humanitarian work, she explained. You've done both. Doctor's organization became one of the most respected in the galaxy. Funded by contributions from dozens of species, it provided aid to any beings in need, regardless of their species or politics. Minu, now her deputy director, managed operations across hundreds of worlds. Admiral retired after the war, satisfied that she had done her duty. In her retirement speech, She said something that became famous across human space. We prepared for war so we could preserve peace. We fought efficiently so we could be merciful. We showed strength so we could afford kindness. That is what humanity should be. The empire slowly rebuilt under its new limitations, became their leader, guiding them toward a future focused on trade and diplomacy rather than conquest. She often spoke with human representatives, learning from them, trying to understand how her empire had gone so wrong. "We thought power meant the right to dominate," she told Ambassador during one meeting. "You showed us that real power means the ability to protect, the responsibility to defend, the strength to be merciful when you could be cruel." Smiled. "We learned that lesson the hard way, over thousands of years of our own history. We nearly destroyed ourselves many times. When we finally reached the stars, we swore we would never repeat those mistakes. But we also swore we would never let others make those mistakes at our expense." Years after the war, Counselor stood before the Accord Council for the last time before her retirement. A young species called the had asked for humanity's help. Another empire was threatening them, demanding tribute and submission. They were peaceful, their military inadequate to resist. "What will humanity do?" the representative asked, still bitter about his fleet's defeat years earlier. Smiled. "We will teach them. We will provide advisors, defensive technology, strategic training. We will help them build the capability to defend themselves. But we will not fight their battles for them unless absolutely necessary." "Why not simply defeat their enemy as you did, the counselor asked. "Because the greatest gift we can give is not victory but the ability to achieve it themselves. We will stand with them, support them, guide them. But they must learn to stand on their own. That's what real strength is." The Council approved humanity's intervention. It set a precedent. Humanity would help defend those who could not defend themselves, but always with the goal of making them capable of their own defense. It was a new model for galactic power, one focused on building strength rather than enforcing weakness. On Earth, in a classroom filled with young students, Minu taught a course on recent galactic history. His students asked him about the war. "Why did it matter so much?" one asked. "It was just 6 months out of thousands of years." Minu thought carefully before answering. "It mattered because it was the moment the galaxy learned something important about humanity. We're not warriors by nature. We're builders, traders, explorers. We prefer peace to conflict. But we prepared for war anyway because we understood that sometimes peace requires the ability and will to fight. When the threatened innocent lives, when they assumed our preference for peace meant we couldn't fight, they learned the truth. We don't fight often. But when we do, we fight to end it permanently." And that's the lesson that changed the galaxy. Power without restraint is tyranny. Restraint without power is helplessness. Humanity showed that you can have overwhelming power and still choose mercy. You can fight with devastating efficiency and still protect the innocent. You can win a war and still offer a fair peace. One student raised her hand. "So we're the good guys now." Minu laughed. "There are no good guys in war. Only people trying to do what they think is right. We fought because someone went too far, threatened innocence, assumed we were weak. We showed them they were wrong. And we tried to do it with as much mercy as possible. That's all anyone can do." The title, "When Humanity Declared War," became a phrase used throughout the galaxy. It was a warning to would-be conquerors. It was a promise to threatened species. It was a reminder that some lines should never be crossed. But it was also a story about restraint, about fighting only when necessary, about protecting the innocent even when they're your enemy, about offering fair peace after devastating war. It was about a species that prepared for conflict but preferred peace, that could be terrible in war but chose to be merciful whenever possible. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was not to be threatened, but it had also learned something more important. Humanity was not to be feared but respected. They would defend the innocent. They would stand against tyranny. They would fight when necessary but always seek peace when possible. And perhaps most importantly, they showed that winning a war didn't require losing yourself. You could fight with honor. You could show mercy to defeated enemies. You could change the galaxy through strength tempered by wisdom. The war was over, peace continued, and humanity stood watch, ready to defend but hoping never to fight again. That was the real lesson. That was what the galaxy understood. That was why when humanity declared war, everything changed.